How's it going, Great Nation? Chris Thomas here. Hope you're having a great A kind of day. And on this installment of Great Nation, I'm lucky to be talking to Lance Ingram. He is an avid concert goer, and he's the host of the podcast Yesterday's Concert, which talks about live music. To learn more, go to yesterdaysconcert.com. That is yesterday with an S, concert, no dashes or underscores.com. Lance, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Chris. You doing all right today?
Oh, yes. I'm really excited to be talking about this subject matter with you. But before we start, I just want to make sure, is there any relation to the late singer James Ingram, singer of the classic 100 Ways?
No, no, not today. I do have an uncle named James. We call him Jim, but I am in no relation to him or any other famous musicians that I know of, unfortunately.
Because I was thinking maybe you could get VIP access by saying that
That would
you're
be
in some way related to James Ingram.
that would be quite the catch if I had that. But unfortunately, no. My James Ingram is just a he's just a guy that lives at home and goes about his life. So unfortunately, that's not him.
Now, you have been to over 750 concerts. What is it about the live music experience that you find so enjoyable?
That's a good question, Chris. It's hard to put into word. It's hard to put into words in a lot of ways. I think people, when they think about going to see their favorite band, or if they've seen their favorite band, it's something that they're able to relate to. It's not an experience that you're going to find in any other kind of art out there. Like you can go to an art gallery and be moved by a beautiful painting. You can read a great book, but there's nothing that quite does it like going to see your favorite band in concert in person. It's just when you're in the crowd and the decibels from the speakers are just blowing your face off. It just does something to it. It moves you. It's I talk about in the Paul McCartney episode of my series that I just started weeping in the middle of one of the songs. I had never cried at a concert before. I'd never been moved to tears at a concert. And I just started weeping. And since that day, I cry at almost every concert. And it's just something about the music moves me. It's just something about, everyone puts aside their differences for those 2, 3 hours. They sing the songs that they love. And it just brings people together, as cliche as that is.
What started your interest in attending concerts?
Uh, yeah, I picked up music fairly early, probably second or third grade. I became absolutely obsessed with Elvis Presley. From like second or third grade until around eighth grade, that's literally the only thing I listened to is Elvis Presley. And mind you, I'm only 32 years old. So that was, late 90s. Elvis had been dead for, 20, 30 years at that point. He was not really hip in any way. And I don't know why. I don't know why, but I just got really, really attached to him. And so I just loved his voice. I loved his music. I loved the way he did renditions of songs. And then I slowly started expanding my horizon. But, my parents took me to concerts, before that. And, I went to a lot of concerts probably before I started counting them. But my first concert was in 2006. It was or no, 2005, excuse me. It was Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers. So, I have to admit I'm from Mississippi. So you can take the Southern rock just can't take it out of me, man. So that was my first concert, was seeing them. And I don't know. It was such a wild experience to me. I mean, there was just people, I'd never seen such freedom in people and the way they acted and the way they behaved. And I don't know. It moved me a lot. It was something that I thought about for a long, long time after that. I bought a t-shirt at the show and I wore it. I mean, just every single week. And I even bought it in a size too big, knowing that I would be able to wear it for even longer into the future as I grew. Cause I think I was a junior, maybe in high school, sophomore. I don't remember. Um, but it was just to be able to carry that on. It seems like I knew going into that show that this was going to mean a lot, but it left me with this insatiable desire just to see more, to feel more of this experience. And um, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 years later before I started actually going to several concerts a year. I mean, it might be 2 or 3 a year for those first couple of years. But then, the first year that I went away to college, I think I went to like 70 concerts that first year. So it was just tapping into some kind of insatiable desire.
Now, how have friends and family reacted to your concert going at the pace when it started to pick up, when the pace started to pick up in college?
Yeah,
How did
that
they respond?
parents didn't react well, honestly. My grades started suffering, if you can imagine. So they pretty much said, like, if you want to go to concerts, you got to run it by us now. We're not paying for you to go to concerts; we're paying for you to do school. So it slowed me down after that first year and a half. And to their credit, they were absolutely correct. I was there to learn, not to go out and party and do all that, but still made a way to the concerts. But yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have a very, very understanding and loving wife who gets that I love going to concerts and that it means a lot to me. She doesn't go to all of them with me. She probably goes to 20-30% of them with me. And there's a lot of nights that she really makes a big sacrifice for me to go out and do this. So I'm really grateful for her and that she just understands that this does bring me a lot of joy in a lot of different ways. So I'm fortunate there, and even to this day, my parents, I'm not on their payroll anymore, so they don't care. They don't care what I do about it anymore. But they don't understand why I have to go see a band 5 times in a week or anything like that. But they know it brings me joy, and I guess they're okay with that.
So, with that dynamic of you and the missus, do you ever feel like, given that you might be imposing upon someone else that you deeply care about, has it given you pause that, well, maybe I shouldn't go? Have you not gone
Yeah,
to shows knowing that you might be placing an inconvenience on other people?
there's been yeah, I mean, just I was telling this story the other night to a friend. In 2016, Guns N' Roses announced that they were going to do this big comeback tour. They called it "Not in This Lifetime" because they had famously said that when they broke up, like, do you think you'll ever get back together? And they said, "Not in this lifetime." So when they came back with this tour, as a big classic rock fan, I said, I've got to go see one of these shows. And as volatile as that band can be, I don't know how long this tour is going to make it. So I got to go as early in the tour as possible. Well, as somebody living in Memphis, they were playing in Nashville, which is just hop skip down the road from us. So I was like, I'm going to go to that show. Well, my cousin decided he wanted to get married on that very night. And there was no way around it. And they were getting married in Knoxville, which is on the polar end of the state. So I had to there was some arguments within the family. I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go to the show," and they're like, "Absolutely not. You're coming to the wedding." And I understood; it made sense. I was being selfish in that situation, but I did. I found another date, and I said I'm going to go to that date. So I went and saw him in New Orleans instead. But I mean, yes, there has been disagreements, and a lot of it is having to accept my own selfishness and realize that I'm putting a lot of people in an inconvenience by doing this. Luckily with my job, I can work wherever, I can work remotely, so it doesn't really impinge on that. But kind of like you were saying, you know, my wife does have to make sacrifices. She does have to accept that some nights she's going to be watching TV by herself. And I've tried to make a conscious effort to say when I'm home, I'm going to be present. I'm going to give you all of my attention. I'm going to spend the time with you. And the weekends that I'm not out going to concerts, I'm going to really put an effort into going on a date or doing something that says, like, thank you, I love you, and just making up for the huge sacrifice that she's giving for me.
I was going to get to this, but I think it fits right here because some people, and this isn't me, but I just think, when someone hears that you've gone to 750 concerts in the span of 17 years or so, and it was a heavy clip, in the last uh, 8, 9 years. Some people outside looking in may perceive this as maybe a compulsion, or that you are compensating for something that's missing in your life. Might there be any validity to that, or would those folks be misguided?
They're not misguided at all. No, I think it's weird. I mean, I definitely have kind of a obsessive personality. I think my wife will validate that. But it fulfills me in a lot of ways. it there's a lot of fulfillment in seeing my favorite artist live. It's really hard to explain to people that aren't music fanatics like me. Like one of my best friends in college, we lived together for several years. He saw the band Fish. He's been a massive Fish fan for years and years and years, and they've been disbanded for a long time. And then they came back in 2009. And since 2009, he's seen around 150 Fish concerts.
Oh
Uh,
my goodness.
yeah, so I mean, like to me, this is completely normal behavior in a way. Just because when I talk to other music fanatics, I'm on the low end of a lot of these things. Like a lot of, I was talking to a guy the other day that does like 250, 300 concerts a year. I've ever done in a single year is 160, 162 to be specific. Uh, so I mean, I don't see it as that. I mean, as an outsider, yeah, it probably does look pretty weird, but to music fanatics, I feel like it makes complete sense. I was listening to one of my favorite authors, Stephen Hayden. He was talking about going to see Bruce Springsteen. He was doing this big tour where he played. I want to say it was The River. Maybe it was Nebraska. I can't remember. It was one of his bigger albums. He was playing the full album every single night in concert. And Steven was talking about, he was like, I'm going to go see him 5 times on this tour. And his wife was like, why? He's playing the same thing every single night. He's like, because I love that album. So, I mean, to me, it's gathering experiences. I mean, each show is different. You're going to pick up different things. That's what we saw Hamilton the other night. And it was the second time I'd seen it since it started. And I was telling my wife just the small details that were different between the two performances. I mean, it's the same play, different actors, but same play. But there was just little things that you could pick up on that were completely different between the two performances. And to me, it made it so much better because you were experiencing just those finer things and you were picking up on those things. Like, I mean, when I see Fish, I've only seen them 17 times, and there's people that go to every single concert on the tour, and I pick up on the small things. Like I did a 5 night run of them back in summer 2021, and just the small things that I could pick up on every single night was just a little bit different. And as a music fan, it sends you over the moon. It drives you wild just to hear those things. So I mean, yes, as somebody who's probably not a music fan, you're like, man, this guy's crazy, but music fanatics will get it.
Well, the thing with Fish, I mean, they're a jam band, so each night it's
Very
different.
different, very
And
different.
and
Yes,
then with Springsteen, yes, he may play an entire album from start to finish, but the other songs, it's going to be a mix.
yes,
Whereas with other artists, it literally is the exact same set
you are
list played
correct.
the exact same way every night. So do you think that with that in play, there is a distinction to be made with some artists being seen multiple times as opposed to other artists?
Definitely. And I mean, I should be forthright that I am a jam band fan. I mean, I have a tattoo of the Grateful Dead and Fish on my bicep. So I mean, I love those two bands. And there's definitely a significance to seeing them multiple nights and frequently on the same tour. Uh, but I mean, I mean, there's been bands. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I'm struggling right now. Um, but I mean, there's been bands that are more mainstream that don't jam as much, that may not ver- vary the set list night to night, and I'll go see them 2 3 times. I mean, like for the Foo Fighters, they don't really change their set list that much. It's pretty by the books every single night, but I've seen them multiple times on a tour, and like I was saying, there's just little intricacies that are different every single time you see them. And sometimes you'll pick up on the artist is filling the crowd a lot more, or they may be a little more chatty, or just little things you'll pick up on and see that are different. Um, but I mean, you're absolutely right. When you have a band that really gives it their all and changes it up every single night and challenges themselves like that, it does make it a whole lot more rewarding as a fan. It puts an emphasis on how much they love the music that they're making.
Is there a certain standard you use when determining which acts to go to? And what I mean by that is, do you only go see artists and bands that you like and are familiar with, or will you take chances and see people that you're not necessarily familiar with?
If I'm at a festival, I'm going to be a lot more free willing. I'm going to bounce around a little bit more, take a little more chance. I mean, I have a hard time. I mean, there's plenty of bands I've never heard of, but I mean, like even with, like Bonnaroo announced their lineup the other day, and I looked through and I was fairly aware of most of everybody on there. There was definitely some names I'd never heard of. Um, I mean, I sound really arrogant in saying that, and I don't mean it to come off that way. Um, but I mean, to answer your question, like for instance, we have in Memphis, we have a place called Levitt Shell, and it offers 50 free concerts a year, and they're all through the summer. It's typically Thursday to Sunday night. It's just an absolutely beautiful venue. It's a real family friendly, oriented event. And, most of the time it's pretty much up and comers, people that don't really have a name for themselves, just be getting started, or they may just not have had their success yet. And so that exposes me to a lot of music, being able to go to things like that. Uh, you know, if I do see like one of my favorite venues in town announces a show of a band I've never heard of, I'll go check them out purely out of curiosity. That's the great thing about having Spotify now, is just the ability to go listen to pretty much any single band at any given time. When I was growing up as a teenager, if I wanted to hear an artist, I had to go buy their CD. So it's just the exposure is significantly more now, and that has kind of broadened my taste and broadened my horizon of who's out there playing. But I mean, I'm not afraid of going and seeing somebody. I don't have a lot of friends that are into music. I go to a lot of shows by myself, so I don't get dragged to concerts of bands I don't know or I'm not familiar with too often. Um, but I mean, most of the time I know who I'm going to see.
Now, what goes into this commitment financially, with all the fees attached to tickets and how expensive
Sure.
seats at some venues are? How have you been able to sustain going to so many concerts?
When I was in college, I made friends with the venues. Uh, there was, there was two or three things I did. I made friends with the venues. A lot of bands, especially smaller bands, will have street teams. So if you contact them and say, "Hey, send me 40 posters, I'll put them up around town," they'll give you a free ticket to the concert. So between knowing the people at the door that would sneak you in, getting the posters, and then also I wrote for the school newspaper with a heavy emphasis on music. So I got to interview a lot of the different artists, and part of the gig was, you know, the their manager or something would say, "Thanks for writing the article. Here's 2 free tickets. Go to the show and enjoy yourself." So that's how I made it through college. Pretty much, I didn't pay for very many shows in college. Now it comes down to just a lot of budgeting. You know, being aware of which bands are going to sell out immediately, and you have to get the tickets right when they go on sale, versus what artist is probably not going to sell out and you might can hold out, even for a discount, because they have to start slashing prices. So a lot of it is just kind of knowing knowing the area. Like, my wife likes looking at real estate. She likes browsing houses and seeing how much they cost and things like that. Whereas I like to get on Ticketmaster and look at venues I'm never going to go to, see how well the show is selling, see what the prices are like. So it's really just keeping up with these things. I mean, that's about the extremity of my nerdiness when it comes to this, is doing that. Because that's pretty bad. I'll admit that. But it's just really curiosity, and it really interests me to see how those kind of things operate. So yeah, I mean, it's really coming down to budget, understanding the market, and just kind of playing it out. I mean, a lot of times, like before 2020, Groupon would do, people would put shows on Groupon, so I could go to, I saw Herbie Hancock for like $15 because I found a
Wow,
deal
that's
on it.
a
Yeah, it's a
that's a
great
good
deal.
deal.
So I mean,
I mean,
uh,
considering it's Herbie Hancock, yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I mean, it was a great show. He played like 90 minutes. It was only 6 songs. It was just jammed out. It was fantastic. Great show. So I mean, it's just little things like that. It's just once you start getting more connected, you start figuring things out. And, I mean, as well as, getting to know people. Like if I'm at a venue a lot, you start seeing the same bartender, you start seeing the same guy at the door. Just be friendly and talk to them and get to know them. And eventually they might start letting you in the back door. It's just little things like that make a big difference.
So the missus is scanning the housing market on Zillow, and you're scanning the ticket market on Ticketmaster.
That's accurate. You are correct in that.
Do you get souvenirs at each show, or do you collect anything to have memories from each event?
It depends on the band. Sometimes it depends on the price. That is where I kind of draw the line. The souvenir prices are getting pretty extreme. $40 for a T-shirt is just that's just wild to me. I do like collecting the lithographs, the 18 by 24 posters that a lot of bands are doing, specific to each show. I have a big portfolio full of them from shows that I've been to. I try to, if it's the first time I'm seeing a band, I try to get the poster if they have one, just to hold on to that memory. If I especially like the poster, I'll get it. But you know, I used to buy a T-shirt every single time I went, and it just, so many of the shirts are just cheaply made, and then they're really expensive, and before you know it, you just got expensive dish rags. So I don't buy souvenirs as much anymore, but I used to. And I mean, if it's a band, I'm trying to think of somebody recent, like I'm trying to think so not yeah, I guess the short answer, not so much anymore.
Well, the one thing about posters and lithographs is, how do you keep them in good condition? Because you're going to your seat. I mean, someone adjacent to you might kick it over,
Hmm.
spill a drink on it, and then transporting it back. That's the big thing I've been paranoid about. Well,
Yeah.
if I'm buying a poster or a lithograph.
So I saw the Foo Fighters here in Memphis in 2015, I think it was, and I bought a shirt that shrunk immediately after I wore it the first time, and a poster. And so they weren't giving out poster tubes that night, so I wrapped the shirt around the poster, and I put it deep underneath my chair so nobody would step on it, or anything like that. And sure enough, the guy behind me spilled his beer, completely soaked the t-shirt. The poster got just a little damp. It wasn't too bad. But yeah, I mean, a lot of like Fish and a lot of bands like that, they do poster tubes specifically for that reason. It is a massive burden to carry it around. If you get up and go to the, like, if you go by yourself like I do, you got to go to the bathroom, you got to take it with you. You can't just leave it at your seat. I mean, sometimes, like, I saw my morning jacket last year and made really good friends with both of my neighbors on both sides of me. And there was one point during the show, I was like, I really got to go to use the restroom. And I leaned over to the guy, I was like, will you watch it for me? And he's like, absolutely. I got you, man. So I mean, it's just, being kind to your neighbors and things like that. You'll be able to ease up some. But yeah, I mean, I see a lot of, I saw Widespread Panic earlier this year or last year, and they there was guys in there with custom poster tubes that they brought in just for that show. I mean, they were all stickered up and real nice, and they did it just for that show, and they had the strap over the shoulder and everything like that. So I mean, it's a real thing, and it's kind of crazy how much the prices for those things go for. I mean, that collectors are really serious about that stuff. So I mean, I don't take it that serious, but a lot of people do.
Now, how much space do all the posters and lithographs take up at the home? Because now it's not just going to the venue and enjoying the show, it's bleeding into the household.
Sure. Well, I actually only have, uh, in my office right now. In my home office, I have four posters up. At my work office, I have four more posters up. So really only eight posters up. I have a big portfolio book, like I mentioned earlier, that I keep them all in. So that one's actually full now. So I have a couple poster tubes waiting for a new portfolio book to come in. But I mean, it's a really nice book. It's an 18 by 24. It's got the sleeves. You can drop them in, protect them. So I mean, I haven't had any damage with that. So I just keep them in there, and I talked to a couple other collectors, and they all do it the same way. So that seems to be the way to go to minimize the storage, at least.
Now, this may sound silly, but it has always stuck with me, and you brought it up. Richard Christie from the Howard Stern Show years back admitted that he would wear a diaper so he wouldn't miss a single song at a show. He's so passionate, and
Yeah.
the thought of missing a single moment, it led him to wear a diaper at shows. Have you ever gone to similar lengths, or what goes through your mind if the urge goes, well, I have to go to the bathroom, but I want to enjoy this song?
I've never gone to that extreme. I've heard stories about people doing that. I've seen people grabbing empty bottles, empty beer cans. Uh, there was one show I was in the lawn for one concert, and we were walking out leaving, and there was this guy who was just heavily inebriated. He just had it on full display, sitting there going in a beer can, and I locked eyes with him, and we just we just made eye contact, and it was the most awkward, uncomfortable thing of my life. This guy's just sitting there urinating right out on the lawn. But no, I've never done that. I don't go to that extreme. So ironically enough, if I'm at a festival, I kind of purposefully dehydrate myself. I drink the absolute bare minimum that I need to not pass out, essentially. There's been a couple of shows. I'm thinking 2008, we saw the Black Crows at the Beale Street Music Festival. And it happened to be that every artist on the stage that day, it was like 5 or 6 artists, was somebody that we wanted to see. So we were like, well, let's get out there at noon before the gates open, and then we'll go straight to that stage and set up. So that's what we did. We got out there about an hour before the gates. We came in, we went straight to the still, and me and my buddy Joel, just for the first couple of shows, the crowd was pretty light, so we could kind of get in and out. The buddy, Joel would protect while I was out. I would protect while he was out. And the later in the night it got, the harder it got, and it just became this like drink just enough so you don't pass out. Just have a little bit of liquid. Um, and as soon as the show was over, we beeline to the restroom. Then we rehydrate on the way home. So I guess I'm in the opposite side of it. I don't hydrate at all, just to avoid that.
Do you find that it's an uncomfortable experience, being parched and not able to really just talk because your throat is so dry?
I mean, honestly, Chris, the thing to me is the music's worth it. Um, the music is worth the sacrifice. I think about another instance at the Beale Street Music Festival. I got to see Soundgarden, and 11 days later, Chris Cornell passed away. And I think about, like if I'd had to go to the restroom and if I'd missed, Black Hole Sun, what an incredible disappointment that would be to my life. Because I'll never get to see Soundgarden again. I'll never get to see Chris Cornell sing again. So, I mean, to me, it's worth it in that instance because, you know, the sacrifice is really and truly small. Oh no, my throat's dry. Oh no, I can't talk to my friend right now, which, by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you talk during a concert, I'm going to give you a dirty glance. I can't stand that. Please be quiet when the artists are performing. But you know, to me, it's worth it. You have to. There has to be some give and take, yes, but there. This is a lot bigger than me. I don't know when I'm going to have these opportunities again, and I want to make sure that I get the most out of it and that I really go all in.
It's funny you bring that up because last year, the remaining monkeys
Hmm.
were doing a show not too far from me, and then just a few weeks pass, and Mike Nesmith passes away.
Hmm.
And so, even though I wasn't, a big fan of the monkeys, it wasn't my generation. I know what they mean historically,
Hmm.
and so now there will always be a part of me that thinks, "Oh, I missed out on the opportunity to
Hmm.
see that show."
Yep.
And so it's gonna probably irk me every time I think about it. So you do make a good point. You don't want to miss out if you really are a music fan and you're passionate about music history and all the artists.
And if you look at my year by year like numbers of when I start going to concerts, I mean, just within the past 6 or 7 years, it really takes a spike up, and it started to spike because I think it was, what was it, 2014? Somebody's gonna prove me wrong on this. David Bowie died, and then a couple months later, BB King died. And to me, those were the biggest two missed opportunities for me because I remember David Bowie released Black Star on a Friday, and I listened to the album and I did not love it on the first listen. I love it now. It's one of his, oh, it's so great. Um, but I listened to it, and my first thought was, I don't like the album, but maybe I'll get to see him tour finally. Maybe I'll get to see him in concert. And then he passes away over the weekend. And then with BB King, as somebody who grew up in Mississippi, he played in state all the time. He, it felt like he was in town every other weekend, and I was always like, "I'll see him next time. I'll see him next time." And then there was no next time. So to me, there was a clear correlation in like, as a classic rock fan and somebody who has a lot of music history appreciation, these opportunities are running out. There's not going to be a lot more chances to see the Rolling Stones. That's I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I've got to go see the Stones one more time. I don't know, that's in an episode that I have coming up in season 2. I talk a lot about like, who am I going to be seeing when I'm 67? I was at a ZZ Top concert, and it was the first time that I was aware of the audience around me and that I was the youngest one in there. And I brought the average age down a good 30, 40 years. And, I started thinking about, I was like, a lot of these people, this was probably their first concert and their last concert. And for me, what's that going to be like when I'm their age? Am I going to be packing in a house to see Taylor Swift and, people like that? Or, what does that look like to me? So it's just, we're very lucky to get the time that we do with these artists. I think Fazio with Fish, he had a huge drug habit. And, so did Jerry Garcia with the Grateful Dead. And there's a lot of parallels between those two bands. And, Deadheads got robbed of Jerry Garcia. He passed away before his time because of his drug addiction. Trey got lucky because he was arrested. He had to go through rehab, and now he's a huge proponent of sober living. And so, as a Fish fan, each show is a blessing that we weren't going to get because Trey would have died had he not been arrested. I mean, he's gone on record saying that. So, we have to savor these moments, or else we're going to look back and regret that we didn't take advantage of them.
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring that up because I went to see Genesis this
Mm,
past year.
how was it?
I enjoyed it quite a bit. And the thing that struck me, and I had seen them before when
Hmm.
they did the 2007 tour,
Oh, cool. Very cool.
but obviously Phil's condition is a lot different now. He's not able
I'm
to
sure.
play the drums and he's
Mm,
singing sitting down.
mm,
But the thing that really struck me about that particular concert is how diverse the age
hmm.
range was. And I was thinking to myself, Genesis, well, Phil Collins hasn't released an album since the early 90s.
Hmm.
And the fact that there are little teenagers at the show and octogenarians at the show, it blew me away. And so I was just trying to think about the sociological reasons as to why there are some bands that span the age generations, and I guess it might be the Phil Collins factor with his
Hmm.
work on the Disney movies, but it was a really interesting thing to observe.
I mean, I could relate it all to growing up on classic rock radio. Um, it was honestly a big bonding source between me and my dad when I was a high schooler. I can remember getting in the car, he'd taken me to school, and a Peter Frampton song would come on. He'd be like, "I remember seeing him in 1979," and he would tell me the story. And I think about a lot of teenage relationships with their parents and how most teenagers probably would have cringed and been like, "Dad, stop about the good old days. I don't want to hear it." But for me, it was like, "Dad, please keep telling me more." Like I remember going to see the Eagles in 2007, and the guy behind me started talking about seeing them in the 1970s, and I just ate it up. But I mean, I think there's a huge renaissance, especially with the rise in classic rock radio in the late 80s, early 90s. I think that really did a big number on keeping these songs alive, as well as when you see like Taylor Swift and how much she's done for the 80s music lately, because, just all the work she's done with Jack Antonoff, who's a big 80s fan. I think it brings it all back around. It's also cyclical. I mean, even thinking about like how there's just this big post punk movement happening, pop punk music is hitting the charts again. Like Olivia Rodrigo, her biggest song of the year was a pop punk song, and it hasn't been since 2002 that a pop punk song was popular. So it's just weird how everything is so cyclical, and everything comes back around and everything's popular again. And I think a lot of that is with the classic rock. I think a lot of that is just ever so present because it's so cyclical. And then you have the people saying, "Well, how many times are the Rolling Stones going to tour? Like they can't have much left in them." So people are wanting to savor those moments and come to them. But a lot of teens are coming to them through modern artists, and then they're getting exposed. And I think about the ZZ Top concert I went to last year, after Dusty passed, and the people sitting on one side of me, it was a father daughter, I mean, she was probably about my age, probably in her 30s. And then on the other side of me, it was, pretty much the same exact thing. It was it was a dad and his son, and same age and everything. So I think there's a generational aspect of it that's really connecting with people.
Yeah, I'm going to be seeing REO Speedwagon this year for the first time, and
Okay.
I'm intrigued as to what the age range will be.
I
And
saw them in 2006, maybe. So, no, it was later. It was like 2008, 2007. Um, and it was a lot like your Genesis show. It was very varied, and REO Speedwagon has a lot of hits that kind of transcend the ages. They're not so like a lot of bands. They have a lot of hits that are really crossover for generations.
yeah, and which artist or group has surprised you most in terms of their ability on stage, and which group has disappointed you the most when you compare, the studio effort to the live show?
So I talk about that a little bit in season one. Gary Clark Jr. was a really big disappointment for me the first few times I saw him. Um, I heard when he came out with his first EP in 2010. I was really blown away. I was like, this guy is the next big deal. Like he's where it's at. I was like, he's gonna bring guitar back into the mainstream. He's gonna be the next guitar guide. And then I saw him open for the Foo Fighters in that 2015 show, and it was just bad. He didn't solo one single time. He sang more than he played the guitar, and it was a really disappointing show. And then I ended up going. That's what I talk about in the episode. Is I go see him another time, and I start to acknowledge you're more than just a guitar player. You're actually a very talented artist. You're a talented singer. You're a talented songwriter. Yes, you can play a mean guitar, but there's more to you than just that. So he was a big disappointment at first, but I saw him again late last year, and just phenomenal show. He soloed like crazy. I guess he heard the episode or something, but he was all over the place shredding. Uh, so he made up for it, but he was a big disappointment at first. Bon Jovi was a really big disappointment for me.
Oh
Um,
my God. I have to be honest with you. I have not enjoyed the recorded work, and even though they are a huge, huge band historically, I would not go see them because I had a feeling that live they just wouldn't hold a candle to their studio work.
well, it wasn't so much that they were bad performance wise. And so I'm like you. I'm not a big Bon Jovi fan. Um, Ironically, I'd taken a new job, and on the way to work every single morning, I passed a billboard for the show, and so I saw it every single day, and I was just like, good grief. And then there was just one night when I was browsing Ticketmaster, I saw that I found a $20 ticket in like the front row of the upper deck, and I was like, all right, I guess I got to go now. So I ended up getting a ticket and going. And it wasn't so much that the performance was bad. I think the performance was fine. It was his set list construction that was poor. He started out with a hit, and it got everybody out of their seat, and then he played some new stuff, and everybody sat back down. So it just kind of killed the buzz. And then he played a big hit, and everybody got out of their seat. And then he played like I think it was like 7 or 8 songs off his new album in a row, and it just killed the buzz. I mean, there was two ladies sitting next to me. They were probably in their early 40s, and you could tell it was a mommy night out. They had been drinking on the wine and the spritzers, and they were just really silly. And then during the show, I heard him sitting over there talking about bath towels. And I was like, you are so bored with this concert that you're talking about bath towels. Like, what's wrong with this? Um, then after so much of the show, he's like, all right, from here out, it's nothing but the hits. And like everybody's like, yeah, this is great. He played like 3 songs and then the show was over. And it's just like it was such a poor set list construction that it just sucked all the energy out of the show. Um, I don't like to be negative when I talk about live music, so I'm trying to think of a positive where somebody really surprised me. Um, I mean, Herbie Hancock, we talked about him earlier. He was a huge surprise for me. Just a really masterful performance. Really enjoyed him.
Well,
Uh,
I'm jealous hearing that you got to see him for $15. I mean, because he's one of the all-time great musicians.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, his Headhunters is still one of my absolute favorite, probably Desert Island albums of all time. Just absolutely phenomenal musician. So yeah, it was just a he was playing at a little small venue in the Delta of Mississippi, basically. And they weren't moving seats, and I just found some seats on Groupon. And I was like, I think I was on the very back row, but I was like, I'm here, I can see him, I can hear it. I don't need anything else. But yeah, it was a phenomenal show. It was really surprising at how good he was. And that's the thing too. Like a lot of the classic rock guys, you think, "Oh, they're 85 years old. How good can they be?" I mean, take the Rolling Stones. I mean, they shouldn't be alive. They're basically corpses up there, and they crush it. I mean, both times I've seen the Stones, it has been one of the top shows I've ever seen. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they can still do.
Oh yeah, Mick sounds great.
Oh yeah, and he's got so much energy. I wish I had half as much energy as him.
Thing with Bon Jovi, I actually kind of respect that he was challenging the audience with the new material because it is kind of a security blanket to go to the tried and true hits, the safe stuff,
Mhm.
playing it safe. You know it's going to get a reaction out of the audience,
Sure.
but exposing people to the new music and what you're passionate about at that time, it fulfills you as an artist, I would think.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think I do appreciate artists, especially of their caliber that are still releasing new material. They're still in the studio. They're still challenging themselves. They're still writing. I think about somebody like Billy Joel, who's kind of rested on his laurels since the what 91, late 80s, whenever it was. Um, but I do think there's definitely a balance that the artist has to figure out because you have to remember that the fans paid the exorbitant price to sit in those seats. You know why they're there. You know what songs they want to hear. So I think the artist has a duty to play those songs. And if you are going to play songs off the new album, sandwich them appropriately. I think that's where Bon Jovi went so wrong is he did 6 or 7 in a row rather than sprinkling them in throughout the set. And I think he would have rode the wave a lot better had he sprinkled him in earlier in the set, had he put some more. I mean, he has so many hits. He could have done a whole show of nothing but the hits. So I think if he had just better constructed a set list with the new songs in them, it wouldn't have been an issue. I think about the Dave Matthews Band. I'm a big fan of them, and I've seen them a good amount. And in 2009, when they released Big Whiskey and the Gru Gux King, they would play a 21 song set, and 11 of the songs would be new songs. And it's like, God, and their fan base is so rabid, they're going to go to multiple nights of a show to see the band. So, if you're seeing them 4 times on a tour, you're gonna get those same, new songs every single night, and they know their fan base is like that. That's the thing about it is they know that. They're well aware of that. That's how they got the rise to fame is on those kind of fans. So, I mean, I do it's a tough line to balance because I don't wanna say only play the hits, but I do think there has to be some kind of balance there.
Now, do you think the venue that artists play at and ticket sales serve as a barometer of the popularity of the artist? Because I mean, like you mentioned, Herbie Hancock. I mean, you would be surprised that he would be playing at a small venue,
Mm.
and there's a struggle selling tickets. What do you think
I think
goes
it's
into the venue and the ticket sale? Because I know you're scouring Ticketmaster every hour, seeing how many tickets are gone.
I mean, I think there's a lot of variables. I think you also have to consider the region. Like the Mississippi Delta is not a heavily populated area. Why there's a concert venue there to begin with, I don't know. I got to think about did they promote that well within the Memphis area that's just up the road? There's so many variables to getting butts and seats that I don't think you can just blame it on any one thing. I mean, there's a venue. I'm trying to think of who it was, but there was a concert down in South Haven, Mississippi, which is really just a suburb of Memphis, because of the way Memphis is right on the corner of Mississippi and Tennessee, and it's a 15-minute drive, give or take, and it's a small arena, so it probably holds 8 to 10,000 people, and this band, they were literally giving away tickets to the show. And the next day I was telling a coworker about it, and they're like, I didn't even know about that show. They're like, I would have gone if I had known about it. And I was like, they were literally giving away tickets. He's like, I had no idea. And so I think a lot of it comes down to, how well did they promote it? How well did they promote, like, we're only 15 minutes from Memphis? It's just little things like that, I think. And I mean, I do think too about like Casey Musgraves. She's doing a big tour for her new album, and she's going on tour in the next couple of weeks. And we're going to see her in Nashville, and the Nashville show is very well sold out. But the Chicago show, I mean, there's just tons of empty seats. And so, I think about the last time we saw her was in Nashville at the Bridgestone Arena where she's playing again. And I mean, she was literally selling out so many seats, they were piling people into the rafters. And, I think she might have misgauged why that show sold out and decided to do an arena tour. It wasn't because it was Casey Musgraves. It was because, it was Yola and Maggie Rogers also on the bill. It was because this really hot country artist was playing in Nashville, not Chicago. So, I mean, there's just a lot of factors that can go into something like that.
Now, do you have a preference for venue type, or does it matter if it's a stadium, a theater, or an outdoor auditorium?
I don't prefer stadiums. There's never been a stadium show that I went to where I was like, wow, this sounds really good. They're always boomy, they're always echoey. I mean, it is cool. Like we saw Taylor Swift at the stadium in Nashville on her Reputation tour. And I mean, it was pretty overwhelming. Just that, I mean, 60,000 people all there singing along to the same songs. I mean, that's a pretty overwhelming experience. And it really kind of goes back to your first question about like, what about live music? It's just a really great experience to have that many people packed in. But, I prefer a venue that sounds good more than anything else. The more that I've gone, I enjoy a general admission venue because I can pick out where I want to be. And that way, if my neighbors are chatty, I can move. Or if the sound's not good in a spot, I can move and find somewhere where it sounds better. So I mean, it really just depends. I mean, I have no problem. I love a club show, like a tiny bar show. They're a lot of fun when you can just be right up there against the musicians and, talk to them for a minute after the show. But I mean, there's still something really great about being at a arena show. It's just it doesn't really matter to me. But I mean, I just want the room to sound good more than anything else.
Now, your podcast, Yesterday's Concert, serves as a part memoir. Have
Mhm.
you found that the collection of shows you see at a given point in time are a reflection of your mindset or how you're feeling at that point in time in your life?
Oh, 100%. That's the wild thing about concerts is every single person in the venue is going to have a completely different experience. Um, you know, Whereas I may go see a band and I like the band, but my neighbor, that may be their absolute favorite band in the world, and this is the first time they've gotten to see them. Maybe the only, and they saved up for months to go to this one concert. So I mean, everybody's going to have a different experience at the concert, and that's it's just so many things that can be a variable. I mean, because you can have chatty neighbors, it can just mean a lot more to you. But yeah, I mean, there are little things that make a difference. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, the ZZ Top episode that I have coming out in season 2. A lot of that episode is me having the epiphany of like, this is the last concert, maybe the first concert for a lot of these people, and I was a very dedicated classic rock fan to that point, and I had the epiphany that I needed to start engaging the current modern music a lot better than I was, and so I go into that pretty deep, and that's why that's why that concert stands out to me, is because I had that epiphany, and that's what I want people to connect with when they hear the show, is they've had these similar experiences at their own concerts that they've gone to. I really want to dig into people's nostalgia and help them realize that these concerts meant something to them as well. When they got to see their favorite band, the emotions that it welled up inside of them. That's what I want people to connect with.
Now, which show have you traveled the longest distance to attend?
Right now, it's Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden. We flew from Memphis to New York for it. I mean, I've done the drive from Memphis to Chicago, which is about 8 hours. I've done that one several times for concerts. I will say the wildest travel journey that I've ever done. As I mentioned, I'm a big Dave Matthews fan, and much more so when I was in college than I am today. But there was I was taking a summer class, and it met from 10 to noon every single day. And if you missed a class, you were dropped to the entire letter grade. So I was already riding like a solid C in that class. So I couldn't miss a class. But Dave Matthews Band was playing in St. Louis on like a Wednesday night or something like that. And I just had this insatiable desire. It's like, I have to go to that concert. So what I did was immediately following the class at noon, I got in my car, drove to St. Louis, got there at 6, ate dinner in the car, went and saw the concert, got over at 11, drove an hour and a half south, checked into my hotel around 12:30, got a took a nap for about 3 hours, and then got up at 4 in the morning and drove back and literally pulled into the parking lot to be back for class at 10 a.m. So literally a 12-hour excursion just for this one concert. So I mean, I'll go. I don't go that hard anymore, but that's the kind of level and dedication that I've had in the past.
And what's the most you spent on a ticket?
Whew, I don't know if I want to say that one out loud.
Yeah.
That might be embarrassing. Um, I mean, it's all relative. I'll say like that. I mean, there's been a couple of times where the only single ticket I could get to a show, like for instance, when I was on my Fish tour last year, there was a show. It was like the second show in the 5 night run, and it's like I wasn't gonna miss it. I didn't have a ticket to it, and I had to pay what I had to pay to get into the show. I mean, I tried everything I could for months to find, an affordable ticket, and I just couldn't. So I ended up having to pay what I had to pay. Um, but I mean, I think about too, like when I saw Willie Nelson several years ago, I think I paid like 250 for the ticket, but I was front row. I mean, very literally front row. I got
Actually, yeah, for Willie Nelson, that's a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, well, not only was I front row, but it came with a T-shirt, like several other like souvenirs. Like it came with like a little stash kit, so you could put your pot in, I guess. Of course, Willie would be selling that. It came with like a laminate to wear and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, it was a really good deal. I mean, like once you factor out the price of the T-shirt and all the other stuff that came in the deal, the ticket was only like $100, and you got to remember you're sitting front row. So I mean, like I said, it's all relative to what you get, but I try not to go too crazy when I'm spending on tickets, just because I know I'm going to so many. They're gonna add up pretty fast.
So there have been a few times where it's been at or over the $500 mark.
No, I haven't broken that one yet. Well, no,
Oh,
I wait. Hold on. I'm sorry. I take that back. I do. I forgot. I bought tickets. My wife's favorite artist is Elton John, and I surprised her with tickets to his final U.S. performance ever at Dodger Stadium later this year. And knowing that it's a big deal, it's a big concert. We'll never get to see him again after that. So I did spend in excess of that for those tickets. But that's the one rare occasion. Yeah.
wow, that sounds like incredible experience. Elton John in Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, yeah, we're very excited about that. That's going to be a big one for us. That's that's her favorite artist, hands down, and so I've been able to see him a couple of times more than her. So I'm trying to get her up to a couple of more times before he calls it a day. So that's going to be a real big one for her.
And the thing with Elton, I mean, he's had a few retirement tours, but I feel that this is really the last one.
Oh, this is definitely the last one. There might be like an occasional, Coachella or something like that where they, just paying him an astronomical amount of money to come do one single performance. But I really do feel like this is it for him. I think he really wants to focus on being a dad, and I think that's honorable. And he's been doing it for so long. He's made his money. I think he's earned his retirement.
Now, how has all of this concert attendance impacted your hearing?
That's a great question. Ironically enough, my wife is an audiologist.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I know, yeah. So it was pretty much destiny. So there's been a couple of shows where I actually just got my hearing tested a couple weeks ago, and it was normal somehow. Um, yeah, in 2017, I found some earplugs. I'm not sponsored by them, but I'm going to plug them because they're amazing. They're called Vibes, Vibes, and they are the best things I've done since I've become a music fan. I take them to every single show, acoustic, whatever. I wear them at every single concert now because when I put them in, I hear everything so much clearer. It's almost as if somebody goes in my head and turns the volume down just a couple of notches. The first time I wore them, I was amazed. I looked at each instrument on stage and I could hear distinctly what they were playing. It wasn't muddy. I could hear the bass line, I could hear the guitar, the keys, everything perfectly. So ever since then, I'm a very big fan of hearing protection. I can remember seeing Motley Crue in 2000 farewell tour now that they're coming back. Um, and I ended up leaving the show early because my ears were in so much physical pain from the loudness of the concert. It was a 2 hour drive home after the concert, and I pulled on my ears the entire drive because they were hurting so bad, and it was just ringing. And there's been a lot of nights where I laid in bed and didn't sleep any just because it was ringing so bad. But somehow I've managed to maintain pretty good hearing through it all. I guess I'm just really fortunate there.
Well, putting yourself at risk for your passion for live music.
Yeah, yeah, that's what my wife because at first I didn't want to wear earplugs because when I think about earplugs, I think about the big thick styrofoam whatever they are like that just they feel like you got like massive cotton swabs in your ear and they muddy the sound. They're so terrible. I remember seeing Jack White and he was just so loud. I had to use them and it made the show sound so much worse. It was just so muddied. Um, and so I was very against using them. But then my wife, she was like, if you're going to keep going to these shows, you have to start wearing hearing protection. And I was like, you're the wiser one, you're the smarter one here, so I'm absolutely going to trust you. um, and so I put up a fight for a little while, but I conceded, and now I can't imagine not wearing them. I mean, they're a game changer.
And for those music enthusiasts listening, Vibes, is there a specific model?
No, they only have one model. There's only one product. It's just Vibes, and they are phenomenal. I bought a pair for my dad for Christmas a couple years ago, and it was actually 2019, so he didn't get to use them for a good while, but he finally got to use them a couple months ago, and he's like, "Wow, these are really great." And, I mean, he said all the exact same things I did. So I can't recommend them enough. I mean, even if you don't go to concerts at my level, if you're going to go to a concert, especially if it's indoors, you really should be wearing hearing protection. It's just it it can hurt. It can physically cause you pain if you're not careful.
And in 2019, you went to a record of 162 concerts, as you mentioned.
I
In
did.
the span of the year, I mean, you go from 162 to pandemic life. With
Yeah.
the last 2 years, what was it like not being able to go as many shows as you would have liked?
2020 was pretty hard to start out with. I think I made it to like 8 shows before everything shut down. Um, but luckily, we had a venue here in town that figured out how to do it safely. Um, and there was a place in Nashville that figured out how to do it. And I went to a couple. The first one back it was a drive-in concert, and so we pulled up in the car. It was really cool. It was actually a really enjoyable experience. Just we brought a picnic, we had our own food and beverage. We had our own little space, and we just watched the show from our car. We had the lawn chairs out next to it, and it was a really enjoyable experience. So I ended up doing probably 4 or 5 drive-in shows, a couple of outdoor pod shows. So I think I ended up getting around 25 concerts in 2020, with most of those coming after the shutdown. But then in last year, you know, it was such a weird experience because, around May, June, things were fairly normal. You had the vaccine out, and, a lot of places, the numbers were just dropping really low. And so a lot of places, I went to some shows and they were the pod shows. And it was like, this is why are we doing this now? Why can't we just be normal? Like we have all this at our disposal now. Um, so it was weird, but eventually, like I think it was around August, late July, that things just really became normal again. So I did the majority of my shows. I think I did